Call to order the meeting of the Eastpointe Planning Commission for Thursday, March 3rd, 2022 at 7:02 p.m. Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. Broll.
Present.
Ms. Ulinsky, present. Ms. Ford. Mr. DeHunt.
Here.
Chairman Palazzolo.
Here. Is a commissioner prepared to make a motion to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting with the modification of moving all items under Section 5, unfinished business, after all items under Section 7, new business?
I'll make that motion.
Do we have a second? Are there any comments, questions, or other proposed changes? All right, we have a motion by Vice Chair DeHunt and support from Commissioner Ford. Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. DeHunt.
Yes.
Ms. Ford. Mr. Broll.
Yes.
Ms. Ulinsky, yes. Chairman Palazzolo.
Yes. We move on to the first hearing of the public. If you would like to comment on any of the items that are identified in Section 6 of the agenda, those are the public hearing items. That would include the rezoning of 14919 East Mile, the zoning ordinance amendments regarding group homes and food trucks, or the amendment of the master plan to include the strategic corridor plan. We kindly ask that you wait until the public hearing for that item. If you would like to comment on any other topic, please request to be heard and wait to be called. When you are called, please approach the podium. Make sure you record your name, and you will have 3 minutes to speak. Is there anyone who wishes to speak? Seeing and hearing none, we'll close the first hearing of the public and move on to the approval of minutes. Is the commissioner prepared to make a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting dated December 2nd, 2021?
I'll make that motion.
Do we have support?
Support.
We have a motion by Commissioner Broll and support by Secretary Ulinsky. Are there any comments, questions, or concerns?
I hope we never have another issue like that again.
Me too. Thank you, sir. Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. Broll.
Yes.
Ms. Ulinsky, yes. Ms. Ford. Mr. DeHunt.
Yes.
Chairman Palazzolo.
Yes. Is a commissioner prepared to make a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting dated January 6th, 2022?
I'll make that motion.
Do we have second?
Support.
We have a motion from Vice Chair DeHunt and support from Commissioner Ford. Are there any comments, questions, concerns? Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. DeHunt.
Yes.
Ms. Ford. Mr. Broll.
Yes.
Ms. Ulinsky, yes. Chairman Palazzolo.
Yes. We move on to the public hearings. Item A, if you would like to comment on the proposed map amendment to 14919 East 9 Mile Road, please request to be heard and wait to be called. When you are called, please approach the podium, state your name, record it on the paper up there, and you will have 3 minutes to speak. Is there anyone who wishes to speak? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing for the map amendment, the proposed map amendment for 14919 East 9 Mile Road. Move on to item B. If you would like to comment on the proposed text amendments to the Eastpointe zoning ordinance regarding group homes, please request to be heard and wait to be called. When you are called, please approach the podium and state your name, record it on the paper at the podium, and you will have 3 minutes to speak. Is there anyone who wishes to speak? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing for item B, the proposed amendment to the Eastpointe zoning ordinance regarding group homes, and move on to item C. If you would like to comment on the proposed text amendment to the Eastpointe zoning ordinance regarding food trucks, please request to be heard and wait to be called. When you are called, please approach the podium, state your name, record it on the paper at the podium, and you will have 3 minutes to speak. Is there anyone who wishes to speak? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing for item C, proposed text amendments to the Eastpointe zoning ordinance regarding food trucks, and move on to item D. If you would like to comment on the proposed amendment to the Eastpointe master plan to include the 9 Mile strategic corridor plan, please request to be heard and wait to be called. When you are called, please approach the podium, state your name, and record your name on the paper at the podium, and you will have 3 minutes to speak. Is there anyone who wishes to speak? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing for item D, the proposed amendment to the Eastpointe master plan to include the 9 Mile strategic corridor plan, and move on to new business. Item A, Will someone please introduce item A? I'm sorry, actually, I apologize. We did not take an opportunity to introduce Ms. Brazaszewski. Ms. Brazaszewski, welcome. Thank you. I don't know if you or Ms. Ha are prepared to introduce the item A under new business.
Certainly, thank you, Chairman. The request before you tonight is a rezoning request for the property at 14919 East 9 Mile Road, parcel ID 021325479057, from the B3 General Business District to the and the P1 Vehicular Parking District to the B3 General Business District.
Thank you. Would you please review your memorandum of January 26, 2022?
Yes. So the report that you have in your packets tonight details, if you look at page 2 of that report, the current zoning of the property, which is split zoned. The southern larger portion of the site is zoned the B3 General Commercial District, and the smaller northern portion is zoned the P1 Vehicular Parking District. The applicant is requesting to rezone that northern portion of the P1 district to the B3 with an end goal of developing that portion of the property for a mini self-storage facility. Self-storage facilities are not permitted in the P1 Vehicular Parking District today. That district is solely used for surface parking to augment existing businesses. And we note on page 2 as well our recommendation, which is to recommend denial of the rezoning based on 4 findings of fact. The first is that the request does not support an orderly transition between the residential and non-residential uses. That due to the parcel's configuration and depth into the neighborhood, that it will have a future commercial development on that portion of the property would be highly visible and intrusive, not just to the north, but to the west and the east. That the rezoning does not support the goals and objectives of the 2040 master plan, nor the intent of the future land use map. And lastly, that the request could set an inappropriate precedent, allowing for future commercial encroachment into established residential neighborhoods. So we provided a sample motion for the commission, if you so choose to recommend denial to City Council this evening. Thank you.
Do any commissioners have any questions for Ms. Hall? Is there a representative of the applicant who would like to speak and address the concerns that are outlined in the... Yes, sirs. Please approach the podium. Please remember to state your name and record it on the paper at the podium.
I'm Sahar Iskander.
And sirs, you have been provided a copy of the memorandum from the city planner dated January 26th?
Yes.
Okay. And is there anything you would like to say in response to those findings or recommendations?
I think for the first item, that the request does not support the orderly transition, I think we can accommodate that if there's a recommendation on what would be classified as an orderly transition. Could we just relocate the structure further to the east and allow maybe landscape features, whatever would be classified as an orderly transition between the business and the residential area.
Okay.
Right, and then the other item that I had here with regards to the item 2, We can change the zoning to be an S2 instead of a B3 if that would make it a more restrictive, just so that there is no future business development. I don't know if the intention was that, if there's a future business development, that there would be a 2-story, 3-story, that would be allowed on that zoning of B3, but we could change the zoning to be S2, so that way it's restrictive to just storage. And the idea that we have is just that it's a single-story, 10-foot, no more than 10-foot high facility storage. And we could also break that up into maybe like 3 or 4 chunks instead of just one long sheer building. And for item 4, that would be the same as just to use the same classification as S2 instead of B3. That way we can just constrict it to a storage facility, and there won't be any future development.
Do any commissioners have any questions for the applicant? Ms. Howe, to the applicant's point, can you describe in a little more detail what would be appropriate for a more orderly transition to the residential neighborhood?
Well, the current zoning, the P1 vehicular parking district, is intended to be that buffer between the B3 commercial and the residential neighborhood. Although this size parcel probably wouldn't accommodate it, you know, office uses, multifamily zoning would also be appropriate transitions.
And did the applicant communicate to you this idea of an alternate zoning classification? Or is this the first time you've heard this?
This is the first time I've heard about a different zoning classification. The problem that arises with that, though, is storage facilities are a special land use in the B3 district. They're not permitted in the B1 district. And the only other district they're permitted in is the industrial district, which would be, you know, even further away from the intent of the master plan.
Any other questions from commissioners?
I actually have a question for the fire marshal.
Sure.
It seems to me that that would be such a tight spot back there. Do you feel comfortable with that type of a development? Especially in such close proximity, not only to homes, but to business?
No, as long as a adequate fire lane is kept to get back into there, which is generally 20 feet wide with 13-foot clearance for our vehicles to get back there, there wouldn't be an issue. To get to the houses that are behind it, we can get to that right off of Hayes. So as long as there would be maintained that fire lane, that size drive to go through there, no parking, no anything back there.
And that's what we did, is we just looked at the depth of the parking space, and we just used the depth of the building to be the same as the depth of the parking space there. So that way it would allow for maneuverability of even
We have the
waste
whole-
management
the-
trucks.
The structure in front was an issue, we could still get behind it in front of it, so.
This whole concept is very precedent setting, which scares the tar out of me. I'm a little concerned about that, because any business that's got an adequate amount of space behind his building, are they gonna ask for the same thing? This is a very dangerous bailiwick to get into, unless I'm misunderstanding this. What's to stop other people from asking? And then
Or every commercial property that abuts a residential district?
Yeah, and the next thing you know, we're gonna be a metal container building, or a city. I mean, I could ask for redistricting in my residential, I could put a little storage pond up. I mean, this is a slippery slope.
Any other commissioners have any comments, questions, or concern?
I have a question for the applicant. Can you describe what type of storage you're putting up and how you'd manage it? How big are the units? Were you trying to attract Are they secured?
So the unit size, we're just looking at something, and we looked at a manufacturer that does it. It's a pre-engineered system, and they come in either 8 feet by 18, 8 feet by 20, or we're just looking at something for the unit width to be maybe like 9 by 18, 9 by 20. Each unit would be essentially the same size as a parking space, and that's how we went about designing the idea for that.
How many units are you talking about?
We looked at it would accommodate for what's proposed there about 16, 17. So we're thinking maybe even 16 because of the material width. It would take up some space between wall to wall. So 16 would probably be accommodated on there. If we go to the alternate route, it may be less. We're talking maybe like 14, just so that we can provide gaps in between each structure. It would have 4 structures. Each structure would accommodate maybe like 3 or 4.
So if it was 16 or 17, those are modular units that adhere or are connected to each other, so it becomes one string.
Right now, based on that proposal, the whole thing is just one building.
Right.
But if we break it up to break the character so that it's doesn't look so industrial, just so that we can kind of accommodate in terms of character to the residential, we can break up the unit into chunks, and we can provide landscape in between each structure, and also like a line of tree or tall shrubs, if you will, behind the structure to screen it from visibility.
Yeah. How do you expect to secure it? And how do you expect to manage it? If somebody wants to go in there, and are there hours of operation, or how does it work?
Those units usually have like locks that you don't have to, they're like coded locks. So you're not managing the, the actual, in and out. I suppose we could set some kind of hours to it, but I really haven't thought that far ahead as far as, can people get in there at nighttime or not? It's not gonna be surrounded by a fence, so I don't even know how we'd stop them, other than maybe the locks could be such that you can only go during the day. They do have locks that have like times on them. You can only open them from 8 to 5 or, whatever.
Who are you trying to attract to those units? What type of storage do you expect?
I'm thinking neighborhood people needing to store extra stuff. I mean, not businesses.
Yeah, well, and that's a concern, right? So you could have a company that comes in there and stores their, a company that's gonna do fabrications in houses or residential or commercial, whatever. They might store stuff there, and they've got a job, they're starting on the job site at 6 or 7 o'clock, so they're in there banging around at 5 in the morning. And we don't want, and it's abutting residential, and that goes back to the entire principle of, why there was zoning and why this is a special land use, and perhaps it's not the best transition to a residential, which you abut. So that certainly is a concern, and you can understand that.
No, I do understand that. I think it'd be less, though, than like the 7-Eleven that sits right there on the corner. I mean, they have 24-hour traffic and delivery of beer and pop in the back, so I don't know that, I think this would be a lot less used than the retail center out front,
So,
I can't imagine people going there more than once a month or something. Once they put their stuff in there, they may never go back in there.
so are you, and how are you managing it though, in terms of, right, that's a shopping center, so is the management office, is it part of one of the existing buildings, or is there somebody managing?
No, there won't be a management office. We'll manage it from our central office that we manage all of our properties from. Because like I say, it's kind of small, and there won't be a lot of activity. I think these kind of places, usually somebody rents them, they may keep them for a year, 2 years. They put stuff in there that they just can't get rid of.
Yeah.
And then they probably don't look at it again for years until finally somebody decides to do something with it.
I'm interested, what gave you the idea to use that particular, what triggered you to say, this is a good spot for?
Well, because it sits in the back, and it's already walled by a concrete wall, so it's already kind of part of the property. Storage is very big right now, and it's very in high demand, so I thought that would be a good use as far as, attracting people to rent it. I can't imagine putting an office back there, or maybe you could put an industrial building back there, I don't know, but I think anything other than storage gets very little traffic. If you look at a big storage facility that's got 300-400 units, you hardly see anybody in there at all.
Yeah, I'm somewhat open to it, but I'm also struggling with the same issue that I heard from my fellow commissioner, you know, and from what we heard from the city planner, it's transition to residential is struggle. It's admittedly potentially a low transition for a B3 or for, you know, for that type of environment, but, I'm still struggling with that, so.
Yeah, and I understand where you're coming from. Although I'm seeing a lot of these being built like the one on Gratiot, right on Gratiot, and everybody's visible eye that drives down the road. And it butts residential right behind there also. And it's 2 floors high, and it's big and massive. I think we could blend ours in a way that it really wouldn't deter from the neighborhood. I don't see anybody here complaining about it, so I don't think they're really that concerned. It'd probably be a plus. Right now, it's an empty piece of grass that collects litter. And like I say, it's fenced in by a concrete wall like it's part of the whole property. But if you guys don't want it, you don't want it. I'm just trying to use that property for something.
I have a question. Did you reach out to the neighbors?
I didn't. I thought maybe if anybody had a problem, they'd be here.
The one thing that always happens with public hearings is people get their back up when they don't like something, but very rarely do they come and voice their opinion. They'll go to social media and blast the city for whatever.
Yeah.
So, you know, you need to do a little legwork, in my opinion, for me to even consider talking any further. And I would reach out to the neighbors and find out what they have to say. And if they say absolutely not, sorry. Public hearings are great. People don't pay attention to the newspaper. They don't take a newspaper anymore. They don't watch the cable channel, but yet they'll get their backs up when they're upset about something. They don't voice their opinion. So sometimes you got to do a little grassroots work and get to them. And even if the city sent a letter, which I'm sure we did, it still sometimes isn't enough.
Well, what could I do to?
Knock on their door.
But I'm saying, I mean, how would I? Do I get them to sign a letter that says, hey, I have no problem with what you're doing? And
You could ask them to come to the city department, or the building department. You could ask them to reach out to Ms. Holman. There are a number of ways, but I would be very interested to hear what they have to say.
I don't object to that. I'd be happy to do that. If they don't want it, then that's fine. It'll just stay the way it is.
You're talking about, I think there's 2 residences, right?
Yeah, well,
Is that correct?
yeah.
And I'm not minimizing that it's just 2, but
Yeah,
I'm saying there are literally that.
There are literally 2, right?
That's the framework here.
Yeah, and I would have no problem, you know, seeing what they think.
Can I make one more point?
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
know, this is a different parcel of land. You know, it's true that maybe other companies would be interested in putting up storage. It wouldn't be the right fit. Given the nature of this land, I'm a little, you know, it's a struggle, but it's definitely not a no. You know, like, I'm not just saying, no, this is a terrible idea, so, you know.
Yeah, if we had to knock down a house or something, or, you know, this is already kind of carved out.
It's right off of,
Hayes.
side street, and, you know, it's an additional use in a commercial sense to strengthen that parcel of land for your use. So I understand why you would want to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I only want to do it if no one objects to it. But if they object to it, then they object to it, you know.
So it doesn't sound like this is an outright no, but I do have some other things that I do want you to think about if this is tabled, if in fact it is tabled. There are a couple other things I would like to see you address. The first and foremost, most other storage facilities we have in this city control access to the site through gates, coded entries, whatever. You have none of that. I mean, let's be perfectly honest. This
No,
place is
I agree.
open 24/7.
I agree. I've thought about that.
That is certainly something that I would like to see your best thoughts on how to control.
Okay,
And so that we can document who is coming and who is leaving, and when they're doing that.
okay.
Because that is something that every other storage facility in this city, regardless of how it's situated, they can control that. And if somebody does come in, we know who it is and when that happened. the other thing is, do you have experience running storage facilities of any kind in anywhere else, or is this sort of a new venture for you?
Well, we own like office buildings, retail centers, and residential apartment complexes.
Okay.
So this is a first but
Okay.
it's very small and, you know.
One of the other things that I do want you to think about, and then come back to us, is that there are some very specific rules that storage facilities need to follow under state law, and sometimes even under local law, although admittedly I'm a little, oblivious as to what, if Eastpointe has any specific controls on this, but with regard to the materials that are stored, if they are of a hazardous, regulated nature, storage facilities are very tightly regulated through the state as to what they can and can't allow in their facilities, right? My fear is that you could allow someone to store a material that could be potentially harmful to somebody, and you don't know it. And that does cause me some concern. So other storage facilities just treat you like everyone else. They have hoops to jump through to make sure that people are not storing things that they shouldn't on their sites, right? And I want to know from you how you're gonna make sure you control that doesn't happen.
Okay,
These are some other things that I do want you to consider.
okay.
Especially given the proximity, a wall or not, you are still in reasonable proximity to a residence in somebody's house. And God forbid somebody is storing a chemical that could be hazardous, toxic, or regulated in any way, shape, or form. If it gets out, if they mishandle it, and somebody gets hurt, I certainly don't want to be a party to that. So,
And I don't either.
you're right. I hope, that's a great answer. Thank you,
I
sir. for
don't
that.
either.
So,
One more, and to build on the comments I just heard too, so one of the concern I had was, again, you've got some type of construction person that's storing properties in there. If the area is controlled by a gate or some type of access, then I would like to also know what those hours of operations are.
Yeah.
Again, I wanna stay away, especially since you're abutting a residential, I wanna stay away from somebody going out there and, making noise with stones or bricks or whatever at 6 in the morning.
I agree.
That is.
No, I agree
that's-
100%. I mean, I've thought about that. I mean, we've thought about security cameras, but if we could put a fence, I would do it. I just don't know, that seems like it'd be not so attractive, so I just didn't think of doing it that way, but I'm not objecting to that at all. If that's something that would make it work better, I would do it.
So how would all of you feel if we table this maybe till May? Give the gentleman enough time to do his due diligence, he can do his research, what's required from the state, can reach out to the neighbors, and then we can talk about this in May. Does that seem appropriate?
Commissioner Ford, Commissioner Secretary Alinsky, do you have any questions before we start entertaining a motion?
I'm good with that. The only thing that, with the zoning, we still have an issue with that, even if he does all that.
And we're not married to the B, zoning. If we can if there's a different zoning that would be more appropriate and limited, that would be fine with us. We were recommended that by somebody in the city to go that route because the front's B3, so let's just make it all B3. But we're not looking for that. We're just looking for whatever zoning will make it work.
So we are restricted in what we can and can't ask you in terms of, actually, we can't really ask you of any conditions. You can, however, propose your own conditions on the rezoning request. And so if you want to talk to the city and the city planner about doing that, you can engage them in that conversation.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Is a commissioner prepared to,
Before we go down that path, though, so B3 is, if I understood it correctly from the professional planner, B3 with a special land use is what would be acceptable to have this work under zoning. I would not be comfortable, though, necessarily zoning that, I don't think I'd be comfortable zoning that parcel because it abuts a residential without some type of condition, like,
no, we can't do that.
you can't do it.
We can't force conditions on it. We can only take the conditions that are offered up on the applicant.
Well, I guess I'm suggesting, I'm just making a suggestion.
Well, just so
Yeah,
you know, the retail center abuts residential the exact same way, really.
He's asking for the district that abuts the P1 district to match the adjacent.
I understand
So,
that. I guess what
I'm
saying
willing
you
to
is
work with you guys whatever way makes sense. I
I
mean,
guess I'm
I'm
saying
not,
that's something to think about, right, because.
Yeah.
To add a B3 right next to a residential is,
but I'm saying, right, that's what we have now. I mean, we're B3 and the residential's right there next to us.
I don't wanna exacerbate the issue. Although you could sell off that entire parcel and have 5 different, you know, you could break it out, I mean, and then you could have different companies operating B3. I understand what you wanna do is a lower intensity, but if you look at the zoning, what B3 entails, I don't wanna create a bigger issue.
No, again, I don't have a problem with that. If you can somebody can tell me a better way to zone it, I'm all for it.
Is a commissioner prepared to make a motion to table any further discussion and action on this item until the May 2022 Planning Commission meeting?
I'll make the motion.
Go ahead.
I'll make the motion.
Support?
I will second it.
Okay. We have a motion by Vice Chair DeHaan and support from Commissioner Broll. Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. DeHaan?
Yes.
Mr. Broll?
Yes.
Ms. Ford?
Yes.
Ms. Julinski, yes. Chairman Palazzolo?
Yes.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you all.
We're good? Done?
All right.
Okay.
We move on to item B of new business. Ms. Hall, would you please introduce the item?
Yes, happy to. Would you like me to just proceed with the report after?
Please do.
This application before you is for a site plan approval for an event banquet facility at 22410 Gratiot Avenue, parcel ID 021431129003. And the subject site is zoned the B2 Downtown District, where event banquet space is a permitted use. And the applicant is proposing to combine 2 existing tenant spaces into 1 suite and make some internal renovations for the event facility. Our recommendation is on page 5. And we note that we support the reinvestment of this property and the reuse of the building as an event space. But we do note in our review several concerns, namely regarding the shared parking. So to move this project forward, we're recommending that the Planning Commission use tonight as an opportunity to provide some feedback to the applicant on that shared parking, and that the applicant provide some additional information to the Commission regarding the intensity of the use, the maximum occupancy, hours of operation, etc. Thank you.
Do any commissioners have any immediate questions for Ms. Hall? Is a representative of the applicant here? Yes, ma'am. Please approach the podium, state your name, record your name on the paper at the podium.
Hi, my name is Lisa Dye Hightower.
And would you like to address, have you been provided a copy of the planner's report?
Yes. I
Okay,
have it right
so
here.
you have reviewed it, you are generally understanding of the findings?
Yes.
Are there any comments that you would like to provide in response to those findings?
Well, as far as the parking, okay, it's parking behind the building. It's parking like on the street, and then there's also a bank, and it's parking like across Gratiot.
And do you have agreements with those business owners where that parking is located?
No,
Have you approached those business owners to inquire about the use of their parking space?
yes.
Okay. Have they indicated a willingness to work with you on a proposed arrangement to provide parking to your facility?
They cannot give me an arrangement, well, they cannot, to park there, but they said we can use it, but they can't give us anything in writing, like a contract or anything.
Did they say why they can't do that?
The bank said their manager wouldn't allow them to do that.
Is the parking behind the buildings, is that a municipal lot?
It is a municipal lot. Oh, okay. So that is different, that's a separate parcel altogether, okay.
And how many, do you know how many parking spots are back there?
No, I don't know right offhand.
How many?
19.
And how many people are you hoping to attract to your venue?
Well, we were just gonna have like small, like, okay, so like if the church needs somewhere to hold business meetings or like a baby shower, not not real large events.
So if you were to average it out, how many people do you think you would be having in your facility?
Maybe like between 30 and 40, maybe.
You assume 2 people per car.
We have a question, Fire Marshal, have you had an opportunity to review this?
Yes, I have. I did review the plans. The plans were for 128 people, according to the plan set that I saw. That would normally have to be reduced down to 100 people total. That's with your staff also, because you don't have a suppression system in there unless you added a fire suppression system in there. Then on my end, that could be bumped up to that 128. There was a couple other things with some exit signs. There were some other things with some exit signs that needed to be put up that I had referred back to the building department. So, as it stands, the size, everything would be 100 people maximum on the fire department side with that staff also. So if you have 10 people working, that means your max would be 90 people.
Okay.
Question for Ms. Hawk. Can you enlighten me, so that parking spot is municipal, but it's shared by more than just this particular building, right? Or this particular business?
Correct.
So how does that work? Like, okay, let's say, for instance, that particular lot had 23 spots, which is what is requested here or required. But you have 2 other businesses, and they each have their requirement. I mean, isn't the aggregate of those businesses, isn't that what we should measure against, or what is the precedent there?
Yes, I think it's important to take a look at, in any given time, the total amount, but then also, apply some common sense to if their hours of operation are different, if they're different uses. So we certainly don't want to create parking lots just to create parking lots. But there is a concern with this site that the rear lot is used by multiple businesses, and it's unclear what those uses are and their hours of operation.
So we didn't need you to speak to that, your hours of operation. When do you think you might hold events?
It depends, like later in the evening or on Saturdays on the weekend, like probably like from 2 to 5-ish or 5 to 9, something like that. But this probably wouldn't be like a every day,
What is it,
usage.
you think it's more likely that you will have events on the weekend than necessarily during the weekday?
Yes, more so on the weekend than the weekday.
And do you think you are more likely to have events in the evening versus the daytime? Or do you think it's likely that you would have events at either time?
At either time, it depends.
And
Yeah.
how late would you allow events to take place?
Well, to 12 o'clock, 12 p.m. Well, that's when it'll shut down at 12. The latest we'll take is like 5 o'clock. 5 to like 12 or 7 to 12, something like that.
I made a point to look at your location and try and remember, you're in between essentially 2 other businesses.
Yes.
Is that accurate?
Yes.
That the 3 companies would share that parking lot. And I made a point, but I'm drawing a blank. What type of businesses are on each side of you, of this proposed spot?
One, I think on one side is a modeling school. And on the other side, I don't know.
Okay, all right.
I feel like there was an office of some sort, it's the one that's closest to the post office. And then there's that new business on the other side of this lady's building. I fear this is
because the bank, especially if it's Saturday, the bank closes early most of the time on Saturday, so that would be available. I don't know why they wouldn't why they wouldn't formally agree to that.
Might be something that you might need to talk to their senior management about.
Liability, although we have insurance, but they don't want to, take responsibility. But we do have insurance on our property. I know.
I don't think shared parking across the street in Eastpointe Commons, even if they agreed, I don't think it would be safe for your customers. Because you'd be crossing, yeah, you'd be crossing one of the busiest intersections, let alone the back, if there's no crosswalk over there. Then the only other parking would be the municipal lots behind the Rent-A-Center and behind the library. That'd be a bit of a truck for somebody, but, I mean, it's something.
Well, the other way to come closer to the, 19 spots, is it 17 or 19? 19, right? The way to come closer to that is to reduce your, event floor space. So the rule, I guess, here is, every 75 square feet of assembly all floor area, plus an allowance for employees. So if you had a smaller, the discussion would be different perhaps if you had a smaller floor space.
Okay.
And if you did that, then I guess you would probably get a permit of occupancy with a lower number of allowed guests.
So instead of us opening up the building, if we leave it like it is, we should be able to get a permit? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm not saying you'll get a permit or not. And as a matter of fact, according to this, the report I'm reading, it's not really detailed. Like, I don't think they know exactly what your floor space is. I'm throwing out an idea of, if this was if this is something the planning commission was interested in moving forward with, this would be a way to get us closer. If you're limited by your spaces, that is a way to get closer from the math behind this ordinance to get closer to that requirement.
Okay.
Yeah, Ms. Hightower, I think the primary concern a lot of us have, and I think the concerns that are identified in the report, is some of the lack of detail, particularly on the site plan, because we're here for a site plan review and approval. And we need some things identified in the written documentation, either on the site plan or associated with the site plan, so that we can make a better determination. Things like, what are the hours of operation, clearly delineating the maximum number of occupants, how you're gonna provide adequate parking for the proposed use. Your site plan needs to detail elevations on the proposed use, details on proposed signage, if any. I just think we're missing some more information, or details on lighting. So these are some of the things that are identified and outlined in the planner's report that we need your site plan to address. And so if you can take some time to try to address those things, I think we can have a different conversation.
Okay.
Is there anything on that planner's report that you would like to ask questions about here and now?
Well, with the parking, we addressed that already. And the building, okay, we were trying to open the building up and make it larger, right? So if we leave the building as is, will we be able to use the building for the meetings, the different meetings that we're gonna have?
Kind of outside of our purview.
Yeah, and then, I think if what you're saying is you have two units.
Two units,
that your intent
yes.
is to combine into one.
Yes,
But if you leave them as two separate units.
yes,
Functionally, you end up with the same requirements that are outlined on the report. Keeping the units separate doesn't necessarily get you out of the total
requirements.
responsibilities that you have under the zoning ordinance. So you're still gonna end up in the same place largely. You still need to identify sufficient opportunities for parking. You still need to identify hours of operation. You still need to identify maximum number of occupants. You still need to have details on elevation, signage, lighting, so on and so forth.
So if we just gonna if we just use one of the parcels, say we're not gonna use the restaurant, we're just gonna use the other parcel and not gonna use the restaurant, will we still,
Your
Have to go-
parking calculation will change, yes.
right, okay,
But everything else will stay the same. We'll still need to know hours of operation,
Right,
number of occupants, details on the elevations, the signage, the lighting, and so on.
okay. All right,
Ms. Hightower, do you need a couple months to maybe think this through and talk about it?
no, not a couple months, no. Maybe a month
You
or
think you need a
couple,
month?
or a couple weeks.
Well, unfortunately for you, we only meet monthly.
Well, a
But,
month then.
you know, we can see what we can do.
And work with Ms. Holman and Ms. Hogg. They're very adept at these things, and if there are ways that they can help you out, they're here for that. We're not trying to be anti-business, but play by the rules.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you. So is a commissioner prepared to make a motion to table discussion and action on the site plan for the property located at 22410 Gratiot Avenue until the April 2022 meeting of the Planning Commission?
I'll make that motion.
Do we have support?
I'll second.
We have motion from Commissioner Roll and second from Vice Chair DeHaan. Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. Roll?
Yes.
Mr. DeHaan?
Yes.
Ms. Ford? Ms. Julinski, yes. Chairman Palazzolo?
Yes. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, you're welcome.
Move on to item C. Ms. Hall, would you introduce the item and review your memorandum of January 26th?
Yes, thank you. This application is for site plan approval for an expansion to the Marathon Gas Station Convenience Center at 2100 Kelly Road, parcel ID 021432377006. The site is on the B1 Community Business District, where gasoline service stations are considered a special land use. Under that first subsection A in our report, we note that city records indicate that the site has operated as a gas station since 1956, and that the last approval for the current configuration was granted by the city in 1997. We weren't able to find records from the city indicating that a special land use was ever granted for this site. So where we note that it is a legal non-conforming use, it never received special land use approval, but it remains in operation today. However, the expansion is only for the convenience retail building, so we note that this expansion does not increase the degree of non-conformity. Our recommendation on page 3 is that due to the current size and configuration of the site, we find that there is limited space available for new construction, and that the configuration that's proposed of the expanded convenience store raises concerns regarding parking, accessibility, and maneuvering space for customers, trash service providers, and delivery vehicles. So as this proposed project does not comply with the ordinance standards, we cannot recommend approval for this site plan at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any commissioners have any immediate questions for Ms. Hall? Is there a representative of the applicant who would like to speak? Yes, sir. Please approach the podium, state your name, and make sure you write it down on the paper at the podium, please.
Yes, good evening. My name is Joseph Altman.
Mr. Altman?
And I'm the architect for the Brothers property. We do have 13 parking spaces. So we have enough parking space for the, we're proposing to add 667 square feet, which is a very minimal addition to the store. And it would increase the efficiency of the store so that they can function better. business for Eastpointe. And, other than that, we haven't pretty much changed anything in the site. If you look at it, we just added if you look at the site plan, we've just added that 667 square feet to the south of the existing building to bring us to you know, what they're requiring. We'll still have the screen fence in the back. We'll still be able to access the dumpster, which is it's in the same location. And, you know, we see no reason why this couldn't be added, you know, without being a problem.
And, sir, just to be clear on the first point, you said you have 13 parking spaces?
13 parking spaces. That includes the 6 at the pump. Those are,
Okay.
that's how the calculation is
Yeah,
done.
that's creative math. Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
So you're saying you have 13 now.
Right.
After a renovation, you would have how many?
We'd still have the 13.
Yeah.
Well,
But 6 of those are the pump spots.
right, but even beyond that, how would you have 13? I mean, aren't 3 of the spots on the right side where the retail unit would go? I don't see how you would still have the same number of spots.
No. Well, if you look at the original plan that was done back in 1997, we're using the same parking lot spaces that you see now on this plan. So you have the 2 that are on the north end. You have 3 more on the east side. That's 5. You have 1 handicap space in front of the new retail space, and you also have 1 close to that Eagle Avenue.
I understand.
Yeah, so that makes the 7, and then you have the 6 in front of the pumps, so that makes 13. I mean, well, the employees would park right on the east side there, northeast side. They're normally just 1 or 2 employees per shift, so that they'd only need 1 car.
11 if you use the creative math of using the spots in the parking lot, or the pumps. I'm looking at this map, I'm thinking to myself, first, there's not 13 spots, but that's neither here nor there. I'm looking at where the dumpster's situated, which is fine, and then I'm seeing there's a parking spot there, and the first thing I think of is somebody's gonna park there, and the trash company's gonna come through and not be able to get in efficiently, or they're going to crush somebody's car trying to get into the dumpster. So that is of concern to me.
Well,
How many spots are required? I mean, is it 7 required?
Ten are required just for the retail portion of this new addition.
Is there a precedent that states that somebody parked at the pump, did that be considered like a parking spot? I know, yeah.
Ms. Howe, would you like to speak to that?
I'm not aware of a precedent that counted the pump parking spaces towards the retail. That approach was not used in the proposed gas station on 9 Mile that the commission reviewed last year.
I'm gonna tell you exactly what's gonna happen if this was to go through. And I'm not saying I'm opposed to it. You're gonna have people who are gonna park at the pumps and not get gas, because that's exactly what happens at Tenny Kelly all the time. Everybody parks at the pumps, they don't even park against the building, and you have nobody using the gas pumps, and they're all parked there, and they go inside the convenience store. That's exactly what's gonna happen with this parking arrangement.
unfortunately, I haven't been to the site in a while, I can't remember. Where are your fuel wells for the tanks?
They're right central in the plan to the,
Central as in between the pumps and the building?
yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, normally when folks go get their gas, they go in, they grab a chip, grab a pop, coffee, and then they come on back out. They don't linger. It's not someplace you linger. And, it's not like a Walmart or Target or something like that where you're gonna go, shopping for things. You get your pop, you get your candy, your cigarettes, and you leave.
I don't disagree with that.
So it's a quick move. You don't just sit there.
So I think one of the other questions that was identified in the planner's report is the lack of site dimensions. Do you have a different site plan that has dimensions on it?
Well, the property is 100 by 127.
I appreciate you telling me, but I was wondering if you have it. Do you have it on a plan somewhere that you can submit to the city for review?
Yeah, it's on there.
It is?
It's on the
It's
north side
it's clearly not on the copy in our packet, so I don't know if
All right,
someone at the city can talk to us about a site plan maybe that they have that we don't. Anybody know? No? Okay, all right. Well, maybe, I think.
I mean, I've
I'll
got
give it first
copies here I brought some more plans, so if you would like to see, I've got a copy of the plan.
I mean, if you have copies, you can certainly give them to representatives from the city, because I think. And do you have an alternate site plan on the enclosure, the dumpster enclosure, relocating that?
No, that's actually the bed to the dumpster, and, that would, take care of that problem that you're stating.
What type of product are you gonna add to, so you're proposing like taking a third larger than it is now, what type of product are you expecting to sell in that additional spot?
Pretty much the same.
My name is Mohammed Isa. Okay, just basically, if we have all the product that they need, and trust me, like they always ask if we can afford them what they need. Like it's one of their desire. Like instead of them going.
Will flow, particularly for delivery trucks, garbage trucks, the fuel trucks. That would be important, I think, for us to understand how you plan to provide adequate. So if you want it before us in April of 2022, you really only have a couple weeks at best, I think is a fair assessment.
Okay, but I don't think it's, large things that we have to.
Is a commissioner prepared to make a motion to table discussion and action for the site plan, on the site plan for the property located at 21,000 Kelly Road until the April 2022 meeting of the Planning Commission?
I'll make that motion.
So is there support? All right, we have a motion.
The first two bullet points are key to understand what the project entails, but the owner of the site is redeveloping the mall into an industrial complex with 3 buildings totaling a little over 1 million square feet with parking, truck docks, and private roads. And the buildings are proposed as speculative developments.
Auto supply. The nice thing about this plan is that all of
Special recognition wasn't just for that 3-month period, right? So maybe we could just rephrase that. It was for all of his prior service.
I It does say, and for his many previous years of service.
Well, I guess it does.
Secretary, please call the roll.
Ms. Julinski, yes. Excuse me, Ms. Ford?
Yes.
Mr. Broll?
Yes.
Mr. DeHunt?
Yes.
Chairman Palazzolo?
Yes. We move on to item F. Ms. Ha, would you review your memorandum of January 25th, please?
Certainly. This is for informational purposes that illustrate how the zoning code can be more than just a narrative. It can be a visual document and easier to understand. So on page 2, we have included some examples from recent zoning ordinance rewrite in Chelsea, and on page 3.
Presented. And does all of the work need to be done in 2022? Or is this something that can linger over into the next year? Or are we stuck with this tight timeline?
No, I believe it can continue on.
Okay.
It can continue on, and we've actually been discussing this with.
Because I think our goal should be, let's get the 9 Mile changes done in 2022 and look at what comes after within the broader ordinance beyond that, if we can get away with it. Is there an objection, or is there, I mean, what is the stipulation of the funding from MATC?
Money's good.
That doesn't happen very often. So I guess here's my question for the commission. If we are going to present a plan or adopt a resolution
I would advocate for a shorter timeline. Drawing it out can kind of lose sight of the bigger picture, and you can get a bit fatigued.
We went through marijuana.
Yeah, if we can survive marijuana, I think we can survive anything. So I suppose,
If we got it done faster, you'd be happy with us.
right, it's under promise and over deliver all day long. That's what we do.
Ms. Howe, what was your timeline? I mean, I know you said the 8 months, and what would you want it shortened to in a perfect world?
I think 8 months is
Yeah,
Won't take 2 years.
for sure. Okay.
Be optimistic.
Then we're overachievers.
We are.
Yeah.
No, and then we're overachievers.
Yeah.
I'm not going that
No,
far.
we
Yeah.
are.
Oh, you already called me that. Okay, I got you.
You can never be accused of going fast.
Yeah.
material that you've received about mobile food vendors, food trucks, via email or in your packet as well. The proposed language itself, though, 2 pages of potential draft language for the zoning ordinance is for consideration, and is one item for the planning commission to really consider, along with, I think, the DDA, who would be good to get their input on. But this states that parking of a food truck cannot be any closer than 200 feet from a brick-and-mortar restaurant.
Well, then I'm thinking about the hours of operation, 7 to 11. Unless they're serving breakfast burritos, I think 7 a.m. is too early in the morning. And who's going to, all right, let's be honest, who in the city is going to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning to go to a food truck? You know what I'm saying.
Farmers
Certain
markets.
nights of an evening.
What areas are they looking at to have a food truck at?
Well, the way this is written, anyway.
Right.
Well, and my question is for special events or certain nights or areas, is it the same criteria?
A test pilot, where we, try some things, see even what the response is. I know the fire marshal probably has some suggestions also, if you want.
Yes.
St. Clair Shores, Fraser, and actually Madison Heights since we're all under the same fire code, that if Roseville certifies that food truck and they sign a statement saying there has been no changes to it, no damage, that I will accept their inspection as long as it's within 6 months. which is the same that it would be for a restaurant, because they have to get their stuff serviced every 6 months.
Fire marshal, anyone else?
So is this a precursor to social districts, potentially?
Ms. Haw, would you like to try to answer that?
I believe,
I like food trucks. I have enjoyed the services of food trucks, but I'm not gonna enjoy the services of a food truck at the cost of our local businesses.
But a food truck is not gonna stay in front of Villa or
I get it.
within,
We'd have to scrap if they were in front of Villa.
we know this, but I'm saying it,
That's my concern.
The other commissioners have any other questions for city staff?
I have a question. Ms. Holman, have you read this draft? You're the one that's being approached or will be approached potentially.
For instance, one of my favorites was that, and again, not making any decisions, but just one of the proposals was Ethelyn Court be turned into one-way toward Gratiot because it's a wide, it used to be closed off. One-way toward Gratiot, which
Blossom Youth does well when they have their food truck event. Just saying.
I noticed that the permit is for a 24-hour period. And I was thinking like, you know, it could be a weekend permit, but
once that's approved, then they apply for the peddler's solicitor's license application.
which is a 3-day, was that a 3-day?
3-day or 90-day.
Right, and so this one, so, going back to my point, perhaps a little bit of a longer duration than 24 hours may make sense.
County library sounds perfect. Other places I just have concerns, except for special events, Sheila.
But, I mean, so, okay, so if a company said, hey, food truck, you know, some other vendor,
So Ms. Haw, you're proposing this as a potential amendment to the zoning ordinance, is that correct?
correct?
Okay. And see, this is where just philosophically, I have a bit of a difference. I don't like regulating food trucks through the zoning ordinance. I think that using the businesses licensing sections of the city ordinance is probably a better vehicle for inserting these types. The zoning changes for what is required of a building that sells medicinal marijuana versus the business licensure requirements, which if you recall, yeah, don't cry, but we spent an inordinate amount of time going through. Mhm. Yeah, so I think the discussion, the proposal that I'm putting forth, the discussion that I'm proposing is, how do we tackle it? And I think I would recommend that we tackle it by asking city council to form a subcommittee to,
From the location of food truck to the location of the brick and mortar restaurant. That's just one issue. Another item that, whether it's the planning commission or whether it's city council, under the violations fine section, as proposed, it would be a municipal civil infraction of $250,000.
on support from Commissioner Ford. Are there any other comments, questions, or concerns? Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. DeHunt?
Yes.
Ms. Ford? Yes. Mr. Broll? Mr. Broll?
yes.
Ms. Zelinski, yes. Chairman Palazzolo?
Yes.
A minute?
You wouldn't be alone. I forgot that Vice Chair DeHunt was also not there, so.
I don't know about a phone, but, quickie.
A quickie. Okay.
Don't be technical.
Ms. Hunt. Ms. Hunt.
Recommendations for landscaping, green infrastructure, and a review of transportation-related zoning items, so right-sizing the parking standards, including bicycle parking, providing for access management standards. And then Chapter 6 is the actual strategic action plan that lays out how this plan can be implemented over the
District, now all of a sudden, everybody and his brother is wanting to get in on the action. So kudos to our board for having the vision of 9 Mile being something more than just a pass-through street.
Mr. Chair, if I may?
Yes,
I've spoken with you, but not the rest of the board, and extending on the kudos statement. We've been actually recently working very close.
Do any other commissioners have any questions for Ms. Hawk? Okay. Is a commissioner prepared to make a motion to do the following? Approve the resolution of adoption and approve of the 9-mile strategic corridor plan as presented with no revisions. To authorize the chair and the secretary of the planning commission to execute the resolution of adoption on behalf of the commission. Please proceed.
Yes, thank you. This was a topic that the Planning Commission, I think, started discussing back in 2020. And we are attempting to revisit that, hence the public hearing this evening to see if there is any community feedback. We are recommending.
Right now is only a change to Article 2, is that correct?
Yes, there was a table that was previously discussed with the commission. Until I think we've finalized these definitions, that table is gonna have to wait.
Okay, so we're gonna consider these amendments.
See, and you have no idea. How do we regulate that?
That's the part we're still working on.
Okay,
Yeah, this is just the definition section.
okay. And then, so I know when they're state licensed, the state, obviously, there's a whole plethora of rules and that they have to follow.
Are there any other questions or comments? No? And there is no action being requested at this time? No? Okay.
Not this evening, Mr. Chair.
All right. If that is the case, then we move on to unfinished business item C.
Absence of commissioners from more than 4 meetings is grounds for termination. Page 2 discusses some of those conflicts of interest and what to do when a conflict is identified. On page 3, section 6, this is an important addition for RRC for the redevelopment ready certification. This requires that each member shall, there's some draft language for committees, and that extends on page 7. So we're happy to answer any questions. If Attorney Albright has any recommendations, he'd like to incorporate those.
Thank you, Ms. Hogg. There is one recommendation I would make, members of the Planning Commission. It is on the commission shall constitute a quorum, and the number of votes necessary to transact business shall be a majority of the entire membership of the commission present and voting, comma, except when a motion involves amending the master plan, which shall require an affirmative vote of at least 2/3 vote of the membership present and voting. And what that would also alleviate is if, in fact, one of the members abstains for some reason, this way this clears it up that it is the members present voting, which could be a lot fewer than if
Missed meetings, is it 4 consecutive or 4 over the course of a year? Are these excused absences, unexcused absences? What is the?
It says 4 meetings in a 12-month period, but it doesn't say that 12-month period has to coincide with a year. So it could be 4 meetings.
I don't know how that would be addressed.
So do you want that changed to like calendar year?
Yeah, unexcused absences.
So you want to add unexcused in front of absences, unexcused absences of a commissioner from 4 meetings in a 12-month period? Okay.
So another question becomes, how many excused, the intent there is like, show up, right? It's not necessarily the 4 is not necessarily excused or unexcused, saying this is the bar, no matter why you're not here, don't be here, don't not be here at least 4 times.
What would we like to see that language say in section 3? Unexcused absences from a commissioner from,
Do we want a rolling average or do we want it in a calendar year?
I like rolling averages better personally.
Why?
Well, because,
Where we have pre-scheduled meetings and I get the call in advance that I have a prior commitment, and the next meeting, I get the call in advance, I have a prior commitment, and I get the next meeting, the call. Excused, unexcused, that goes to Mr. Brawl's
Yeah.
question, is how do you define that?
So I think so what I hear the commissioner saying is there's a distinction between,
I know that I have to be here the first Thursday of every month. I was in Marion, Indiana today, and I drove all the way home tonight so I could be at this meeting, because I knew that I had a responsibility. The last meeting that I missed, I could not make because I was knee-deep in a trade show. There was no way I could make it, but I made the effort to come home for this meeting today. And if you know that your meeting is on the first Thursday of every month, there's no reason why you consistently are having
2006.
Would you mind rereading it?
Of course. Any member, and again, this is section 2-344, removals, and it provides any member of any committee, board, or commission shall be removed for cause by the city council. Any member of any committee, board, or commission missing more than 3.
But, you know, if anything ever did happen, and do we have to recommend to city council that so-and-so needs to get voted off?
Okay, so the way this is written, however, says absence of a commissioner from 4 meetings in a 12-month period may result. So I think the may is a key point, right? If we know that a fellow member has a legitimate reason, they're going through cancer treatments, God forbid, whatever, I'm personally not, I'm not, trying to.
I would recommend that be 3, so it's consistent, but this commission may want to, in its bylaws, define what is an excuse and what isn't. Because that is not defined in the code ordinances.
I would almost.
doesn't that, it almost gives me more pause, because it's in the ordinance, yet the ordinance doesn't define it, yet we're trying to define it per the bylaws, like that, I feel like we might be overstepping our bounds a little bit.
Not for purposes of the bylaws, because what it,
In a corner,
it's
by
also,
trying to define what that language is.
it's also gonna provide, guidance for any member who may be deciding to, miss a meeting, okay, am I providing a valid excuse or not? So it provides the guidance in that way as well. As opposed to just calling up, I'm not gonna be there on Thursday.
I look at it a little bit in
The ordinance.
It's not like we are expecting to use this, but it's just protection.
and we're setting the bar. You can't, if you're probably not gonna be here 4 times a year, this is the deal.
Yeah. So one of the other questions I have, and I haven't reviewed these sections verbatim, but for section 4 on page 2,
So the only other question I have on this is adding a training component, which is a requirement, is actually a good idea, I think. However, all those boards and bodies, I'm sure, charge for the fee, for the service. So is that something that the city is going to foot the bill for? How do we proceed with that? I mean, I don't know if we need to go into detail. I just want to understand, is the city paying for our training? Yes, they are. Okay.
are there any other comments, questions, or concerns related to the bylaws?
Mr. Chairman, so was the commission then looking to add subsection E then to section 2? For instance, language such as other persons that are able to provide guidance to the commission in its decision-making?
Yeah, or between Ms. Ha and Mr. Albright, you can make these changes for us to review one more time at the April 2022 meeting? Is Commissioner prepared to make a motion to table any further discussion and action on the Planning Commission bylaws until the April 2022 meeting?
Make that motion.
Do we have support?
Second.
Okay, we have motion by Commissioner Broll and support by Vice Chairman DeHaan. Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. Broll?
Yes.
Mr. DeHaan?
Yes.
Ms. Ford? Yes. Mr.
I hope the council and commission use expediency in creating this ordinance. It appears you have the framework there. I was very impressed with the work that the fire department did their homework on this situation. And also, I gotta believe there are other cities that have boilerplate ordinances that you could use. I believe you need to get this done so we could first start getting the work.
Hi, I'm Kathy Disenzo, lifelong resident. First time here at one of these meetings, and I've been very impressed with the knowledge and the scope of all the things you guys discuss. Very impressive. But I'm here because I'm on the Gratiot Cruise Committee as our special event, as Sheila has referred to it. We're trying to bring the cruise back to the grandeur of when it first started. Food truck in front of that empty storefront 2 blocks away from the high school for the Friday and Saturday of the cruise, and I can say, oh, heck yeah, call Heather, because Heather in the clerk's office already has a list of temporary food vendor things. If we can just expound on that as to where these trucks can park and where they can go, maybe this summer, maybe we won't be the ugly stepchild of Macomb County anymore. Maybe we can kind of elevate ourselves and be a little classier and a little more than, instead of just the folks who are kind of watching the world go by. So maybe, hopefully, by next meeting, we could just have a one-page special event, what we need for food trucks, because the special events are here.
Day long. First State Bank, you get off work, you hurry up, go over there, you want to stick around your cars. Food truck would be nice to grab something, and something simple, nothing too fancy or expensive. And that's my opinion on that. What I wanted to say is Eastland Mall, since I think we have a representative here for that. I tell people that moved away about Eastland Mall, and the number one question I get is, what happened to the lion and the mouse?
Gentleman who had a adult child out of state with a terminal illness. He wasn't able to be at every meeting because of the travel to be with his child. And that board never would have thought of removing them under that set of circumstances. I believe the language says that the board, or the commission in this case, may recommend for removal, which gives the fellow commission members great latitude in deciding whether, plan your vacations around that. Plan whatever you can around that. And I did put my name on here. I just hope people can read it.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who wishes to be heard? Seeing none, we'll close the second hearing of the public and move on to comments. Mr. Albright, do you have any comments for this evening?
I can tell that you didn't take this appointment just so you can be up there. You've got your heart and soul in it. And as a council member and past mayor many years ago, I feel very comfortable for the decisions that you guys make. And we will try to solve the food trucks. Hopefully at the next meeting, if city manager will put that on there, I'll request that you put it on there. You got 3 items for tonight. So
I have no comments.
Vice Chair DeHaan.
My heart weeps for the Ukraine right now. I have a customer friend who is Ukrainian, and her brother just happened to be 60 years old and was told he couldn't leave his country because he might have to fight. So my heart weeps for these poor people. So we'll start with the heavy, and I'm going to end with something a little lighter. council members Baker and Curley, can we please make sure that Commissioner Lubeck, well, Chairman Lubeck.
Chairman Lubeck.
Miscommunications. I've also been in touch with, and his last name evades me, Otis, has contacted me, and I've had the same conversation with Otis, that I've started a new job, and Tuesdays seem to be crazy day. So I'm hoping that's going to calm down, and I'm going to be able to set the date for that to happen. So it's not on the city, it's not on the city council. It's on, as you refer to him, the chairman.
Support? All right, we have motion by Secretary Alinsky and support by Commissioner Ford. Secretary, please call the roll.
Commissioner Alinsky, yes. Ms. Ford? Yes. Mr. Broll? Yes. Mr. DeHaan?
Yes.
And Chairman Palazzolo?
Yes.